Arlan, a character that's not very easy to play for new players in general because he does like to play at lower life and his ability to sap his HP does make him a bit more tricky for new players and unga bunga kind of style players to play. But nonetheless, he's a very strong character with very good multipliers and is a destruction lightning character in nature. Let's talk about his skills and how he works, and we can understand better how to use this very strong character that's pretty underrated as of now. Okay, Arlan is pretty easy to understand. His basic attack is just a single target damage dealing. What is more interesting is probably his passive ability, his skill as well as ultimate. Let's start off with the skill ability here. So a skill is also a single target damage that does a lot of damage on a single mob. So for example, let's target this one here and we're going to press E. There are two things that I want you to notice. The first is that his life will immediately get set. And next thing here, you notice that this is 4. At the end of his action, this will still be 4 as well. Okay, so the thing about Arlan is his skill over here. Let's just go into the character screen here so it's easier to see. He consumes his HP when he's dealing damage as well, and he doesn't use any skill points as well, meaning that this character works very well with characters that are naturally a little bit more skill point hungry in team compositions. For example, maybe Yukong, Asta. These are some characters that are also very skill point hungry in general. Does work pretty well because he doesn't consume any skill points at all. He does generate it if he does basic attacks, so that is something useful to note too. So that is for his skill, single target, good amounts of damage. As you can see, like basic attack is like, let's say I have him at level 6, 100 here. It does a lot more on a single target unit too as well. His ultimate ability, on the other hand, is a bit of a splash damage, does a massive amounts of like 304, higher than his skill ability as well. But not only that, you also splash a bit to the enemies on the side, meaning he has a little bit of AoE damage when he uses his ultimate ability too. I'll show you in a bit, but let's talk about his talent passive real quick. Basically, this is the part that makes him also very strong. The lower life he is at, the more damage he deals with. And of course, there are other talents which we will talk about and traces which we'll talk about in a little bit after this like demonstration as well. So now let's get on with the demonstration. Let's look at his ultimate ability first. So we saw from the quick demo that he actually does decent amount of damage. I don't even have him like super well built here. It's like 55, 73. So the damage numbers might not be representative. Then again, this is like a build guide video. So just a quick disclaimer. And now let's get in with the tracers. He's a character that wants to build all of his my major tracers equally. He does maybe basic attack is probably the least. He does use skill very, very often, especially if you have a character to be able to sustain him up. He does want to use this very often since he does a lot more damage than his basic attacks. Doesn't cost too much skill. He's generally not the person going to be generating skill points for his team since he doesn't have detriment using his skill which doesn't consume skill points. So that is something important to know. I will go, for example, leveling all these 3 up in equal proportions. Basic attack probably maybe could be the slowest if you don't really care too much about auto attacking, but those are like some things to consider as well. Other than that, let's talk about the major tracers he has. He has a good amount of DOT debuff increase. This is very nice because you don't want him to be playing at low life and then he gets some burn and then he dies straight away. It'll be extremely funny and hilarious also. So this is really nice, a bit of more resistance as well. He does have other effect rest in his kit to maybe resist some crowd control debuffs, DOT debuffs as well. So it's pretty helpful overall. Since he doesn't really want to build in too much in terms of like main stats, sub-stats on these stuff too. A revival, another bonus ability that he has. If the current HP percentage is 30% or lower, immediately he heals HP when he defeats the target. I don't really see much value in these 2 other ones, hardly use these 2 other major tracers. So if you are not rushing for any time, not really very urgent, unless of course you want to unlock these minor tracers urgently. Otherwise, I think the right side one, this one is probably the most important. This and this maybe can be a bit slower because as you can see, repel here, when you enter the battle, if he's less than 50% damage, can nullify all damage received except for DOTs until he's attacked. Hardly useful in long drawn out fights like Memory of Chaos, so those are like some things to consider as well. Overall, you can see his kit, how it functions. He wants to sap life, deal more damage as well, and the lower life he's at, the more damage he deals too. We'll reflect like this in the team composition videos in a little bit, but let's first talk about Eidolons. Since he's a 4-star, most of us might be eventually getting a couple of Eidolons as well, and I'm going to talk through like the thought process I have in each and every one of them. So E1, when HP is lower or equal to 50%, skill damage increased by 10%. Nothing significant, is okay. More damage is always good, of course with a criteria as well. Number 2, when you skill or ultimate removes, or using skill or ultimate removes one debuff from oneself, I think this is pretty strong since you have that self-cleanse inbuilt, meaning you don't have to rely a lot on like, if an enemy has, for example, AoE debuffs, at least you know one of your characters is pretty much free from these like debuffs. He can cleanse himself kind of thing, which removes like the stress of your debuff cleanser. Usually it will probably be like the Tasha, March 7th or Lota if you have him as well. These are the ones that are dedicated to cleanse, which will all cost skill points as well, because you have to use their skill to cleanse the debuff. This is very nice because skill doesn't cost any skill points as well. Next, turn the tables. This one at first sounded pretty interesting, but actually the more I see it, the more useless it becomes. How it works basically is there's these 2 turns after the battle starts, and if he's knocked out during these 2 turns, he immediately revives and restores 25% of time. Chances are, if you're in harder content, you probably won't be one-shot by the monsters in the first 2 turns. If you are, probably there's something wrong. You are either under level or maybe not supposed to clear it at that point of time as well. So I don't really like this, not very useful. Let me know what you guys think. Am I seeing something that other people are not? For me, it's pretty kind of useless. Last but not least, of course, we have E6, which is self-sacrifice. When HP drops below 50%, ultimate deals 20% more damage, and the damage multiplier is now taken to adjacent enemies as well. As you can see, his Eidolons don't really make him a monster or transform him much from E0. It does add incremental amounts of damage, for example, like some levels of skill increasing, the damage of tracers as well, and some minor buffs here in E6, E1, and also like E2's like utility. But other than that, not too much difference. As you can see, this character works pretty well at E0 and is already very functional at E0 in my opinion. So those are some thoughts on the Eidolons. Let's go into like Lightcones right now. For me, I'm using a Secret Vow. I think it's a very strong one for him. Of course, this is his signature Lightcone. Increases a massive amounts of damage. Here, I only have it at Super Imposition 4, but if you have it at like Super Imposition 5, it goes up to like 80%, and you just need to deal damage to enemies who are current HP is equal to or higher than Wearer's HP, which means if like you are 100% HP, the enemy is at full health, you'll be dealing this entire 70% on your first strike, making it very useful to like one-shot targets as well if you have a very well-built Arlan that's not like mine. Now let's go into the other screen, which I think is much easier to see all the different Lightcones as well for the destruction character tool. So we talked about Secret Vow. I think he's definitely by far his best in slot with that huge 80% damage buff if you have it at Super Imposition 5. I think this is okay. You get a bit of attack increase. I think this is free to play if I'm not wrong. You can get it from the shop. I don't really like this very much because attack percentage is much easier to obtain than damage. If you don't have a choice, I think it's still fair to use. But if you have a Secret Vow even at Super Imposition 1, I think damage bonuses are much harder to obtain as well. This one is also pretty okay in my opinion. You get a very nice amount of crit rate. So for some reason, if you're like one-shotting enemies and like hitting quite a lot, I think this is going to be quite useful. Since if you have it at max level, you get a very nice 24% crit rate increase, which is substantial. But definitely, I think Secret Vow is still way better. Wolf Walk Time, I can't remember whether this is the free one or the other one is the free one. I'm not too sure which one. Doesn't really work extremely well with him because unless you have a character that can, for example, inflict burn or bleed, then you get this like damage bonus. But even still, even at Super Imposition 5, this is already less than his signature Lightcone, a Secret Vow. So definitely this one is like the best by a long shot. And this is probably like the Battle Pass Lightcone if I'm not wrong. And let's say you have it at Super Imposition 1 because it's a pay-to-win Lightcone. No one probably will have max level anytime soon. Increases Wearer's attack by 24%, and when you defeat an enemy, they restore HP. This is nice if you are looking for maybe running him without a healer, but I hardly think anyone would run Arlan with no sustain at all. So I think it is very conditional. Attack, again, I think damage bonus is a lot more important. So for free-to-play players, as you can see, it's quite free-to-play friendly. As long as you have maybe one copy of a Secret Vow, definitely you should consider at least taking Arlan up if you wanted to. He gets a lot of value from this already. I'm just going to look real quick at the 3 stars. Nothing interesting here. The Shattered Home, nothing interesting as well. Damage bonuses, but don't forget it's a 3-star Lightcone as well. So you do lose out on the stats, the basic stats. Yeah, nothing fantastic. Let's talk about the 2 5-star Lightcones. I think that is going to be pretty interesting to talk about. We have the standard Lightcone, something irreplaceable Clara's Lightcone. This one increases attack by 24%, and when you are hit, you immediately restore 8% of the rarest attack, or you defeat an enemy. So either hit or defeat enemy, you restore some HP, which is nice for him as well, since he scaled off attack. Does want a bit of some restoration for sustain, since he scaled the sap HP. And at the same time, the rarest damage is increased by 24% until the end of their next turn. I guess is when he's hit. So destruction characters do get hit quite often, especially if you're running him with Luota without or without a preservation character. He does get hit from time to time, and this damage buff is really nice to have. But in my opinion, I think Secret Vow is still slightly better, especially if you have the team composition for him. You have, for example, someone to sustain him up already. You have maybe a good amounts of attack buffs already. Then damage buffing is significantly better in my opinion. Okay, next up we have On the Fall of an Aeon. This is the one from Herta Lightcone shop once you go into the simulated universe. So let's talk a bit about it and see how useful it is. I'm going to be talking about it at max level, or looking at it at max level, since this is where most of us will probably be eventually getting all standard or these like Herta Lightcones at max level anyway. So when you wearer attacks, increase their attack by 16%, stacks up to 4 times. When the wearer inflicts weakness break on enemies, the wearer's damage increases by 24% for 2 turns. This is interesting because if you don't have an attack buffer, this one gives you tons of attack. So 16% times 4, that'll be like 64% attack bonuses, which is almost close to Yukong's Roaring Bowstring uptime buff for attack in that aspect. And not only that, you also get a very nice damage bonus of 24% for 2 turns. Not as high as a Secret Vow, but considering that this massive stack of attack as well, together with his 5-star stats, I do think that On the Fall of Aeon could be quite useful, especially if you are maybe not running an attack buffer in your team as well. That is the only criteria that I would be thinking of right now. Okay, so those are like the optimal Lightcones. Let's go ahead and talk about Relics and what do I think about them. Optimal Relics. I think by and large, the best one for him is going to be Band of Sizzling Thunder. He does a lot of lightning damage and he uses his skill increases attack by 20%. For 1 turn, he uses both the 2-piece and the 4-piece very well too. I think most people should be running Band of Sizzling Thunders. The other alternative, of course, is Guard of Wuthering Snow. Since he's a destruction character, he generally does take quite a bit of damage, and sapping his own life might make it a bit lethal for him, especially if the enemies are stronger. In the sense, this 8% damage reduction could be interesting if you want to combo this damage reduction together with, for example, Band of Sizzling Thunder's 10% lightning damage. I think it's still decent for utility purposes. I wouldn't go all the way to like push it to 4-piece here for the extra energy as well as sustain, because the 10% damage bonus is quite significant for him. He does good amounts of damage. If you don't care too much about what I've just mentioned and maybe you're looking for something else, you perhaps could look for Break Effect if you are wanting to just run him solely as a Break Effect damage dealer. I do think that he benefits a little bit more from crit since he doesn't have like he does a lot of damage with his multipliers as well. So Break Effect doesn't benefit from those like huge multipliers he gets from his tracers too. Musketeer Warwheat, of course, a versatile set. Anyone can use this. I think it's the same for him. You get nice amounts of attack, you get good amount of speed and basic attack damage. But one thing to know, he doesn't really basic attack too much. So really what you're looking for is this 12% attack. Speed, decent on him, but not fantastic as well. Doesn't scale off with speed as well as some other characters. In that sense, I think you can consider like 2-piece lightning damage, 2-piece attack will be the best I'll push if you want to use this set. But those are my thoughts so far. For the planner ornaments, I think the best in slot for him will probably be Inert Salsoto. He uses the ultimate attack, he uses the crit rate very well. You could run a crit damage one if you have very confident in your crit ability to maybe get a lot of crit from other sources as well. Maybe you have Yukong on your team, or you have some crit buffer, or of your relics maybe are very, very strong. This one is definitely worth considering, because if you get this 16% is better than getting 8% if you're already approaching like the ceiling of crit rate. So that is like something to consider as well. I think this is one of the characters that could possibly use Celestial Differentiator at very, very end game with a lot of crit rate coming from other sources too. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else I really like. Same reason, Break Effect is okay. I think crit is way better on him as well. He doesn't really need too much of these other ones. probably like Copium is Spacing Station, gives him quite a bit of attack bonuses, 24%, but if you're running him with an attack buffer, I'd much rather the crit, to be really honest. So just these two, I think will probably be the better one for him. Now let's go on with like the main stats that I'm using. Okay, and now I'm going to show you my Arlan. I have him using a 2-piece Inert Sao Soto and a 2-piece Band of Sizzling Thunder. I'm just completing like the main stats for this video. I use a different stat as well, which of course is not as optimal for this recording. That's just something to note. For the sub stats, what I'm looking for is mainly like attack percentage, crit rate, crit damage, the usual stuff. Speed is nice if you have it as well. I do like speed on Arlan too. So whatever I can find that is damaging in nature. So for the main stat, I'm choosing to run a crit rate, and of course nice to have some crit damage subs as well. Crit rate definitely is very, very important for him, especially since he's a destruction character. Probably doesn't have too much crit rate in the early game, and that is something to consider as well. Of course, if you're at the later game and you have nice subs, do tweak this accordingly. Crit damage if you really wanted to as well. Other than that, for me, I'm running an attack percentage boot. I would maybe want to switch more towards speed boot in future if I can find a one that is onset as well, but I'm just using what I have currently on my account. So I think speed might likely outperform attack in the long run, since he does want to use his ultimate up a lot more compared to just focusing on just his skill alone. So some things to consider. But this one has pretty okay-ish speed, like at 7 speed, pretty high I guess. So I don't mind using this in the meantime. Don't really lose out on that speed by a significant amount. For the Planisphere, lightning damage bonus, quite obvious for this one. And for Link Rope, I'm using an attack percentage one. Some people might be thinking energy restoration, but I don't think it's as useful for this character, since he does good amounts of damage from his skill. He uses it very often since it doesn't consume skill points as well, meaning his damage distribution on like his overall kit, you will find that it's going to be mostly in his skill compared to his ultimate ability. So that's like the biggest thing that I want to tell you about. Don't think his ultimate is like super important, then you need to build energy restoration. It's good, but not as vital as like some other characters. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about team composition. Now, I decided to make this video after I played Lota because I was curious about one thing and how these two characters can work well together. The reason why these two characters work very well is most of the time your characters will be at full life. If that's the case, you want his to have like the uptime on his fail, and so Arlan always dropping his life below 50% actually helps to proc Lota's passive ability. When he procs his passive ability means he gets his flowers up without using skill points. So it's just like flowers from his skill, which means if he uses it passively, he gets more energy back also. So Arlan is kinda... I didn't expect this, but he works really well with Lota. He forces him to heal him up, get that passive uptime for both of them, and Arlan does damage first. So he gets that, he chunks his own life down, deals an insane amount of damage, then Lota heals him up, so he's able to like sustain attacks, and it just repeats the next round as well. He just saps his own life first, deal damage, and it continues on and so forth. So I think these two are actually an unexpected combo that I didn't talk about previously in the team comp video that I put on Arlan, but I think it's very interesting that I'm exposed to right now in version 1.1 as well. So that's like something to consider. Other than that, characters that work well with him will be characters that shield. If you want to play him just specifically at low life, I think Japat works pretty well for him. Other characters, for example, like Bailu also works very well with Arlan because she has that revive, and if you make a mistake, like maybe drop him too low life, at least you can pull him back up from the dead, so to speak. I think it also works really well. He works very well with any other character that is very skill point hungry. For example, if you have Yukong, maybe you just got her, or you are planning to pull for her in future or something like that, or planning to build her. She's works very well with Arlan, since Arlan doesn't care too much about skill points at all. So skill point hungry characters generally want to use them too. So that's like something to consider. Let me just put more of a free-to-play option here so that it's more friendly for the eyes to see. So this team will probably be pretty good already. You could easily just swap out Yukong for Esta if you wanted to. I think Esta is also pretty skill point hungry anytime before E6. So very good to note as well. Last but not least, a DPS that is going to be complementary to him will probably be a character that is able to make up for his weaknesses. He's a character that deals a lot of damage, doesn't take up skill points. So you want a character that uses quite a bit of skill points, or maybe is much faster and quicker and deals more AoE damage as well. So those are like some considerations I have. He's already a pretty strong unit on his own, and if you want like more team compositions for him, do check out this video I've already done. I do more combinations of characters based on the 5 stars that you have on your account. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. If you like such content, like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more. I do this every patch. for almost every single character. Thanks so much for watching. See you next video.